These were the common realities in the Niger Delta prior to October 2009. Militant groups in different corners of the creeks of the Niger Delta determined to battle it out with federal forces in what will remain in history as Nigeria's most violent resource conflict, the management of the black gold that powers the nation's economy vis-à-vis the environmental and economic well-being of the region that produces it.
So if they refuse to bring back my properties, to do our demands, then it means the government is not ready for peace. So I will do anything I like.
This was just one of several militant camps controlled by well-armed militant leaders with a strong army of loyalists spread across the creeks of the Niger Delta. Fast forward 3 years, what you will find is a peaceful Niger Delta. Militant groups have long been disarmed. Production has not only stabilized, but peaked. The result of the presidential proclamation of amnesty in 2009. Unfortunately, many seem to have quickly forgotten how bad things were. The Niger Delta is home to Nigeria's oil and gas resources. It is the wealthiest region in West Africa and accounts for about 90% of Nigeria's export earnings. It is very rich in agriculture, aquaculture, and solid minerals, as well as a fascinating cultural heritage. About 13 oil and gas producing companies are currently operating in the region, with about 159 oil fields and 1,481 oil wells. There are more than 7,000 kilometers of pipelines and flow lines, 275 flow stations with a thrust of gas flares pumped into the local environment day and night. The attendant environmental and health hazards are best imagined. Politically divided into 9 states with 185 local government areas, the Niger Delta has an estimated population of about 31.2 million people, comprising about 40 different ethnic groups in 13,329 settlements. The exploration of oil and gas ironically led to exploitation of the region and its people. The harsh environmental effects of the activities of the multinational oil companies resulted in underdevelopment, lack of infrastructure, environmental degradation, and massive gas flaring, realities that still exist in the region. Buoyed by the resilient spirit of late Niger Delta activists, a crop of emerging young activists sought a more radical means to bring its plight to the world's attention. The apparent insensitivity of the oil and gas companies and their cohorts in government and elsewhere bred restiveness and militant agitations in the Niger Delta. To appreciate how serious the environmental challenges facing the Niger Delta is, the United Nations Environment Programme Scientific Study Report released in August 2011 estimates that it will take between 25 to 30 years to clean up the damage inflicted on the region, at a yearly cost of about $1 billion, the equivalent of about 150 billion naira. This would make it the world's largest cleanup operation, bigger than the much talked about Gulf of Mexico oil spill in the US. This conclusion followed years of environmental assessment research, which indicted oil giant Shell for years of oil spills and environmental devastation in the Ogoni area of the Niger Delta. The remarkable improvement in the security situation in the core Niger Delta states would be better appreciated when viewed from the pedestal of the situation prior to the amnesty proclamation. It is worth reminding ourselves that by January 2009, militancy in the Niger Delta had virtually crippled Nigeria's economy. Investment inflow to the upstream subsector of the oil industry had dwindled remarkably. Exasperated foreign investors had begun redirecting their investments to Angola and Ghana as preferred destinations over Nigeria, making Angola at some point Africa's highest crude oil producer. Nigeria's capacity to grow its crude oil reserves as planned was seriously under threat. The reason was simple. The insecurity in the Niger Delta was taking its toll. investors could no longer cope and were leaving for a more stable business environment in Africa. The combination of sabotage, kidnapping of oil workers by suspected militants had threatened a shutdown of operations of the oil companies, resulting in a serious strain on the Nigerian economy. Reality struck when the country's oil exports dropped to its lowest point, 700,000 barrels per day, in 2009. In financial terms, in 2008 alone, it is estimated that Nigeria lost over $18.5 billion as a result of militancy in the Niger Delta. More federal troops were sent into the creeks of the Niger Delta, resulting in fierce fighting and armed confrontation with the different militant groups, with huge losses on both sides. At a point, it was clear that armed confrontation was leading nowhere. Hence, after a series of consultations by major stakeholders, leaders and statesmen in the Niger Delta, and engagement with government and the militant groups, then President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua on June 25, 2009, proclaimed unconditional amnesty, demanding that all militant groups and their leaders surrender their arms and embrace the government's peace initiative. By October 25, 2009, after further negotiations and persuasion by the elders of the region, 20,192 militant leaders and their loyalists embraced the offer and were later joined by 6,166. They surrendered their arms, which were destroyed publicly in May 2011.
A segment of society that felt aggrieved, justifiably, because of neglect and underdevelopment, and it would have escalated into open confrontation, and it would have warranted the federal government initiating low-intensity conflict to restore peace. We didn't go to that extent. We appealed, government did, and the aggrieved Nigerians in the Niger Delta region accepted this appeal. Today, we have started destroying weapons that we would have used to destroy ourselves. That is an achievement, and it's a message to the whole world that Nigeria can do it.
The government, on its part, commenced a rehabilitation and reintegration program under a structured disarmament, demobilization and reintegration (DDR) program. This program is what the Amnesty Office has been diligently managing up till now. These were highly necessary in order to stabilize, consolidate and sustain security conditions in the Niger Delta region as a prerequisite for promoting economic development in the area. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Amnesty Office is pleased to inform you that the first two phases of this program, that is, the disarmament and demobilization phases, have been completed. Between 2009 to December 2011, 26,358 of these young men and women, whom we refer to as ex-agitators, were taken through a comprehensive reorientation program by non-violent experts from different parts of the world. 2010 till date, the reintegration phase, the Amnesty Office is currently involved in the deployment of the disarmed and demobilized youths to different vocational centers where they are trained in their areas of interest. This is the most challenging phase of the DDR program of the Niger Delta Amnesty Office.
The successes we have recorded as a country under this current president has never been achieved by anybody. In Liberia, disarmament took them several years. Sierra Leone, the same thing. Rwanda, millions of lives were lost before disarmament was even achieved, even with the involvement of the United Nations and experts all over the world. This Nigerian-made DDRO program has achieved disarmament, has achieved demobilization. We are at a very critical stage of life-impacting part of it, which is the reintegration phase, and this is what currently we are handling.
The training program is also very diverse in scope. They include underwater welding, ocean diving, crane operations, aviation, boat building, oil drilling, fish farming. Others whose interest was in returning to formal education have been registered in universities in Europe and Asia. There are very limited skill acquisition centers in Nigeria that will cater for the training needs of the over 26,358 delegates. Hence, the Amnesty Office has been actively engaged in deploying the trainees to foreign training centers. The outcomes have been quite fantastic. These are some of the Amnesty Program trainees in Aviation Academy in South Africa. Over 20 of them here have qualified as private pilots and are progressing in their training to be licensed as commercial pilots. Here are also the latest figures. So far, 11,525 have been placed in different vocational training and educational centers within the country and offshore. 4,929 are trained offshore, while 6,382 are in quality training centers locally. Of this number, 6,549 have graduated in skills acquisition programs. The breakdown is as follows: welding and fabrication, 2,216, entrepreneurship, 1,933, pipe fitting, 60, carpentry and plumbing, 103, oil drilling and marine-related courses, 700, electrical installation, 89, ICT, 205, crane and heavy-duty equipment, 857, boat building, 49, and 263 in other fields. The Amnesty Office is currently processing 6,067 for deployment to local and foreign training institutions. The Amnesty program has not only brought some relative peace to the Niger Delta, making conditions possible for the sustenance of the Nigerian economy, but it has also equipped the youth who were former armed agitators with productive skills to contribute to the socio-economic development of the Niger Delta. Some of them who have been trained in welding and metal works are looking forward to being a part of the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, and are also prepared to start up small or medium-scale enterprise of their own, and have commended the government's goodwill.
I'm listening now for them to send me for this training now. I'm so happy for me to be on this training. I'm so happy because since with my father not fit do, my mom not fit do. But since then, grandma's Amnesty, since that time they're still taking care of us three now, so I'm so happy.
Get to Nigeria, I will seek for employment to work with offshore company.
Well, I'm very happy for the training because I don't expect this at all. Well, for the first time I was thinking maybe I can able to take this position, but today I'm proud of my country. And what I say is that I will never let my country down. There's nothing can keep me, I cannot work.
I want to thank our President, Goodluck Jonathan Ebele, for bringing everybody together as one. Now, when I've been in Ghana about this wedding training, I get more skills. If I go back to Nigeria, I can prove of myself. I'm a welder. Yes, I can prove. I can go to any test.
One of the training programs that has attracted tremendous commendation from stakeholders and others locally and internationally is aviation training. At the moment, there are over 200 delegates enrolled in pilot training. About 50 trainees are in South Africa and at different stages of their program. In the United Arab Emirates, there are 24 trainees, while 150 are aiming to obtain their European licenses in Greece. Many of them who are seen here decorated as private pilot license holders are also attaining their commercial pilot certification. Theirs is a privilege highly treasured. Looking back, it can indeed be said that the Niger Delta Amnesty Program has ensured steady supply of the lubricant that oils the nation's economy. It is therefore not out of place to emphasize on the gains of the program so as to put things in the proper context. Nigeria is still a mono economy relying heavily on fossil fuel. If production drops as it did at the peak of the crisis to a low of 700,000 barrels daily, it will spell serious trouble for the entire economy. When we experienced that in 2009, 1.9 million barrels were lost every day, and in monetary terms, that amounted to about 33.4 billion naira at the prevailing exchange rate of 160 naira to a dollar. Statistically, the relative peace in the Niger Delta through the Amnesty program has, in 2011 alone, earned about 6 trillion